We're presenting on WMELS. It stands for Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards. We sent out a survey asking what you knew about WMELS. Your knowledge came back to basically you knew what it stood for, and then some people said they knew nothing about it, which that's fine. We didn't know a whole lot about it before we took the class either. What you wanted to know, somebody said they wanted to know what the assistant teacher's role was, how it helps the children, how do teachers implement it in the best way, and will the lesson plans be the same? So pay attention to those questions throughout the presentation and see if we have answered them, and we'll come back to them. Okay, what is WMELS? So like I said, Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards is what it stands for. And it gives developmental expectations of children, and these are split up into 5 domains, each having multiple subdomains. It also provides educators with samples of child's behavior and adult strategies for guiding learning and development. And like Molly said, Young Star, Itters, Eckers, rating, it all has to do with WMELS. Why WMELS? Molly touched on a lot of it, but not all of it. So we're also going to come back to this question at the end. So you guys have to come up with why is this important to our program. Okay, we're going to start with the teaching cycle, which was one of the biggest things that we learned by taking a WMELS class. And there are 3 parts to the teaching cycle: ongoing assessment, planning and curriculum goals, and implementation. So now Megan is handing out Post-its to each group, and within your group, I want you to come up with what you think each one of these means. So what is ongoing assessment, what's planning and curriculum goals, and what is implementation? And once you get it written on your Post-it, then come and stick it on these 3 pieces of paper under the right title.
Okay, so the first part of the teaching cycle, ongoing assessment, what you guys said was
continuing a formal assessment. Milestones. Ongoing assessment, continuing assessing a child's development. Reevaluating over a period of time to gauge progress. And continuously checking to see if children and staff are meeting goals.
So what we have, according to WMELS, is gathering information to determine what the child can do and what the child is ready to learn. So it's your data collection and analysis of that collection. So it's ongoing, it's continual, just like you guys
said. Curriculum goals, you guys said?
Lesson planning. What the teacher sets up. Using lesson plans to be geared towards desired goals.
Well, that's a good one.
Making the curriculum suitable for each child's standards. And setting regular goals.
So those are pretty much all right on track. So it's deciding what should be done to promote development and what we want children to learn. Okay, so this is your planning, your lesson plans, identification and prioritization. So you go through each individual and what they need. Put it into your lesson plan. Okay, last but not least is implementation.
Teaching it and putting it to use. Implementing the goals and standards in your classroom based on the 2 previous steps. Using lessons, tools to meet goals throughout classroom. Learning activities, making sure everything in the classroom helps to support the goals.
According to WMELS, it is providing meaningful, experiential activities that support individual and group goals, guided by supportive interactions and relationships. So it is how you interact in the classroom, what you do while you are with the children, implementing all of the goals. So those 3 parts of the teaching cycle create just a revolving cycle, starting with the ongoing assessment. So you assess them, where is their current level? You create a goal to get them to their next level, and you put it into your curriculum, and then you implement it. And once you implement it into the classroom, then you reassess, and the cycle starts over. So our next part is the whole child. We want to see what you guys know about the whole child. What is the whole child to you? So how do you teach to the whole child?
Like social, physical.
all of the aspects of that child. So Megan's going to do an activity to help you all understand a little better how to reach the whole child and what that means.
So when you guys think a snapshot of a child, what do you think of?
What do you mean, like a snapshot of like their day, or like a snapshot of
a child.
whatever you? Or if a child were to tour, all you know about that child is them jumping on the shelves, jumping on the chairs, using a laser pointer. I didn't know what to say. It was just awkward, okay? And then when they come to your classroom, what are you expecting? That same behavior.
Okay, now you can put it up. Okay.
So, a snapshot is seeing one thing. What do you know by looking at this picture?
Oh, these are so happy.
All the time.
You have one child.
Okay, so if you didn't really know who these people were, they were just coming into your center. That child was coming into your classroom for the first day. Are you going to know much?
Nope. No. Looks like she's got a mom and a dad. That's all.
Yep. I mean, this is all the same day, so kind of think that it's a year or two looking at this.
So pretend that
So
the different
now we know she's
outfits.
3.
Okay.
Yep. And you can pretend that the different outfits show growth, different days. Skip over it to the end. Sorry, getting there.
Okay, now let's say, the child's having some behavior problems on their first day.
Just the last page.
What could be causing that?
New baby.
Now, would you have known that just looking at the child and assuming what you knew during that tour that first day?
If all you saw was this.
You wouldn't know any of that. So remember to talk to the families, get to know them. Use a movie within your teaching cycle to understand the snapshot that you now have.
So what are some ways we can do that in the classroom?
Get to know them, get personal with them,
Ask questions.
Yep. Ask questions.
During
We'll be doing something later on. It's called the Child's Web. That is a great way to get to know the family, and we'll be explaining that. Ashley, what's your
I
question?
feel like a lot of times I just assume things, and I sometimes I try to step back and I'm like, okay, well maybe there's a reason why this child is acting out. Maybe there's a reason why he doesn't like something or she doesn't like something.
Right.
I'll even have it happen where like you get there and the kid is like weird all day, and then all of a sudden you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh yeah, your kid was weird all day. They're like, oh yeah, he had the flu, like and throwing up all
And that's the
Saturday,
kind of
and
stuff that
I'm
we
like,
can't be afraid to ask.
oh, okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Or send a quick email and say, hey, so-and-so is really off today. Or maybe they had an exceptional day, which is not normal. And you want to let mom and dad know that. Because maybe they changed something in the child's routine. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind.
Also think about like religion and culture and their family background. Think about where they're coming from so that when you're looking at the child and the family, you're not looking at it with a skewed bias. You're looking at it with that perspective. So say your child's coming from another culture, say they moved from another place, that's a big part of what that child is, and maybe their family's values and beliefs are much different than what we've grown up with. So keeping those in mind is really important when you're looking at this. And you can kind of start to look at the different pieces on the web. This is what we want you to look for.
Also remember too, in most situations in our center there are 2 parents. Even though one parent is picking up and dropping off, keep in mind there's also another parent. So like looking at our snapshot, do you guys ever see Dave?
Sometimes.
Very, very rare. So keep in mind to always include that second parent in your movie.
So this is a web that will help you keep in mind the whole child. It has different elements. Where it is here she spent most of the day, their strengths and abilities, the characteristics of the child, diversity and learning, so their curiosity, creative, very independent, their family and significant relationships, their life, their culture outside of the center. And then there's a box for what do I need to learn more about. So maybe you're filling this out and you realize, okay, well, I don't know their culture or their religious beliefs. Maybe that's something that you can learn more about or ask a parent about. Just think about eye contact. when it comes to that. Because in our culture, eye contact is important, but it isn't in all other cultures. Like, small children in some cultures are not supposed to look adults in the eyes because it's disrespectful. So knowing that culture has a lot to do with it. So we want you guys to think about somebody that you know really well, probably somebody in the room that you work in. And for lead teachers, I would suggest for sure to do somebody in your classroom because you'll probably want to fill one of these out with everybody eventually. So this will just kill two birds with one stone.
I also have stuff for you to take away, so if you start thinking about which child you'd like to be, you're gonna want to choose a child.
Right. Choose somebody you know well.
It doesn't have to be specific. Think about maybe single words. Like I think about Henley and I think potty trained. You know that she is independent in the bathroom. You know, those types of things.
Where the child spends time. Where does she like to be?
Or even like, do they go to grandma's a lot?
Think about grandmas, moms. As I say, no, she hangs out with grandmas.
Oh, so this is not like where she wants to spend time in the classroom?
Oh, that's what I thought.
Okay, so just to clarify, the setting where the child spends most of their time, don't think about like where they are in your classroom. Think about home versus school versus grandma and grandpa's versus, you know, those different things.
Or even outside, if they like to be outside more than inside.
Yep.
But it definitely could be like they enjoy being in the block center.
They can't be, they can't.
For babies, you would maybe think like they can hold their head up by themselves, they can roll over, they can reach and grasp, you know, those different pieces that, you know, you think about when you're looking at a child, what would you want to see them doing? Characteristic can describe the child like they're happy, or you can say that they're verbal, they're independent, you know, some of those things might also be strengths.
Well, and it's in the binder. You guys are each getting a binder full of WMELS information, and this will be in there.
There is yes.
If we were to do this on our own, is it something we would want parents to see, or is it something we do for ourselves?
Because there's things like, you know, I wrote clingy and emotional, and it's like, you know, the parents might not be happy, right? I think maybe like that transition form that we do, where we say like, this is like for the teachers only, basically.
I think so too.
You'll either keep it in with your child's portfolio at the front, where you can refer to it, or we'll be keeping them in with the child's emergency forms. Sure. So that's also something we have to talk about if we send it forward.
Yeah, so maybe just be aware of the words that you use. Yeah. Okay, so WMELS is split up into 5 different domains. There is health and physical development, social emotional, language and communication, approaches to learning, and cognition and general knowledge. So instead of us just telling you what these domains are, we're going to pass out the WMELS book, and you are each going to be assigned a domain, and you're going to read about it, figure out what it is, what characteristics do children show when they are exhibiting these domains, and you're going to tell us about it. So essentially, you guys will be the teachers for your domain. Okay, so there is a page at the beginning of the domain where it's going to tell you what it is, and then we want you to look through it, page through the subdomains, look at the continuum on the left-hand side, and once you look through it, you'll know what we're talking about.
The first page in each little section's got like a nice paragraph and then a summary section.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the baby room, health and physical development.
Jenny.
Health and development.
For health and development, physical development, we have for the babies, we need sleep because our kids are crabby otherwise. And we have to put them to sleep because they can't on their own. They need dressing. They need help with dressing because they can't. We have to change their diapers because they can't. And we have to feed them because they can't eat either. And The physical ones that we had, it's to show preference for parents or primary care when they get picked up, mom and dads, grandma, grandpas. And they depend on us to care for their personal hygiene and exercise needs as well.
It's a lot of those basic social emotional mini.
Just make sure to hold the mic.
So, social and emotional for the minis, like when we're changing their diaper and they're crying or moving, like they can't do it themselves. So we just like talk to them, explain what we're doing, and like making eye level and like communicating with them so they know what we're doing, and just making them comfortable. Like they express a wide range of emotions, develops positive self-esteem, self-awareness, demonstrates attachment, trust, and autonomy, and they play with others, engages in social problem-solving behavior, and learns to resolve conflict. When they tickle them, they laugh, or when somebody's making a funny face at them.
Okay, language and communication. Okay, so with the peewees, so it's a lot about communication and describing like what you're doing as you're doing it so that children understand. Some of the standards that it lists are listens and responds to communications with others, follows directions in increasing complexity, so starting with one direction and then increasing it, working on increasing so there's more directions. Speaking and communicating, using gestures and movements to communicate. Early literacy shows an appreciation of books and understands how print works. So just reading to them for group time and showing moving the pages, how they're supposed to, how you read left to right, anything with the books.
Our resource subdomains were curiosity, engagement, and persistence, creativity and imagination, and diversity and learning. So with the 2-year-olds, and I guess kind of the 3-year-olds too, just encouraging them to try new activities, and once they complete it once, kind of goes with the persistence, like encourage them to do it again and again till they can do it without really thinking about it. And encouraging them to, like when they're coloring, to not just do like what we tell them, but to make up their own different pictures, or like, and storytelling, I guess, too, like encouraging them to use their imagination. And then also for the last one, just paying attention to how different kids learn and making sure that the way we teach in the classroom kind of caters to everyone's needs, whether that be like singing or drawing or just telling them what to do.
For cognitive and general knowledge are exploration, discovery, and problem solving, mathematical thinking, and scientific thinking. And I guess a lot what ours is about is kind of like opening their minds by using like different tools. Like it says a lot of sensory stuff, hands-on learning, learning numbers, like starting reading and stuff like that. And then just using tools to measure how much they're learning. And
well, yeah, it's what you think of when you think of learning, like typically like book smart almost.
Might be the hardest for like babies and babies.
Yep.
To incorporate, but probably the easiest for
older kids, yeah. Okay, so that brings us to our observations. We're going to hand out an observation form.
In our class, we talked a lot about observations and what is the correct way to observe. So the first thing we're going to hand out is a really nice sheet that kind of tells you exactly what we're kind of looking for observations. It tells you language to use versus language not to use. You really want to avoid feelings. You want to avoid very vague things. You really want to be specific, but you don't want any like emotions in there, like they enjoy doing this. Well, How do you really know that a child enjoys doing art? Yeah, they sit at the table for a long time, but maybe they're just sitting there because they think that you want them to do something. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the first handout. Is it kind of gives you a nice array of words, phrases, things to look for when you're making notes and observing. And the second form that we gave you is what we did in our class. So think about that child that you filled out the web earlier about, and we want you to go through and put a couple examples for the domains. So go through each domain and name some of the things that you would be looking at for that child. So like Tenley for the communication and language, she talks in complete sentences, she uses 2 to 3 word phrases, those types of things. For physical, she can jump on 2 feet, you know, she can run. Those are some of the things that we want to see. When it comes to like the setting, what we had discussed was maybe the specific areas of the classroom. Is that correct? Oh, that's right. So with this, we'll do the video, and it'll have a nice kind of little section for you guys to watch and just observe. So we're going to show a video. We want you to watch it, observe, look at those different domains, use your book. You can kind of pass it back and forth. We really want at least one example for each of the domains if you can. If you don't see something, maybe you could put that you don't see this domain exhibited, but you should see all of them in this video. It's just a short 2 little minutes.
Instead of they enjoyed building blocks. Yeah. While they were building blocks, they were smiling.
Yeah, exactly.
You could see that.
Right.
They were smiling.
Physically.
Or you can put time increments. They spend, 20 minutes of their morning playing in this area so that you can see, well, maybe they do enjoy it because they spend a lot of their time.
Stay away from it. I think they're happy.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
I think, I understand, I enjoy, I love, those are things we want to stay away from.
But if you do an observation of them stacked,
yeah,
you do it objective, right? They stacked 4 blocks while they were smiling, but then you could put a comment then as yourself, like, oh, they really love doing this, like they were smiling.
Which is completely
so add it in a comment after.
Yep. That'd be good. It's an 18-month-old boy.
I was just going to say that. Oh, it's okay. So right here would be an example of he's trying to problem solve where he got that piece from. Can anybody see anything that would be the physical domain? Yep. Yep, he sits in a chair all by himself.
It's okay. Try again. Try again.
Nope.
Try again.
What about social emotional?
Try again. Yay!
Yep, he listens to direction. That's a part of language. Anybody else hear anything from language?
No, try a different spot then. With
Yep.
a bed heat.
And as we talked about earlier, at this age, the adult helping a little bit is okay. We want them to mostly do it, but look, she's letting him struggle for a little bit before she helps him.
Yeah, try again.
There you go.
Try again.
Any examples of approaches to learning? I know we've talked a little bit about approaches to learning. I know that's kind of a hard one, but
That's it. Try
yep,
again.
that's a good one, yep.
Try it. There you go.
Any scientific or mathematical thinking going on in this one with the cognitive stuff? Spatial recognition to understand where that shape comes from.
It can cut out before, but the little boy gets a little frustrated.
Yeah.
how.
He does get a little sad. So there's all those examples. Just in that short 2-minute clip, you could name at least 1 to 2 things from each of the domains. I know they're still a little bit fresh and new for you guys, but that's why we have the books, is so that you can go through those domains and really kind of look at where your child is on the continuum.
And I think the more you guys get familiar with it, you're not going to be able to record every child all day. You're going to have to kind of be like doing this on the fly. So thinking at that time, okay, like the kid was sitting in the book, but were they holding it the right way? Were they mimicking sounds that I said? Things like that. You're going to have to really
So after you have observed the child, right, that's your ongoing assessment. Then you go to planning and curriculum goals. So you have to start by your goal. Okay, so you find their current level, and then you figure out where you want them to go from there. So in your book, if you noticed, looking at your domain, there's a continuum on the left-hand side where it tells you like their level. So you find their current level, and then the one right underneath it is the next level you're trying to get them to. So you're trying to get them there with your goal. Okay, so goals have to be measurable, challenging yet achievable, and they have to be specific.
Here's one of my examples from class. We did this class, and when I was going through and doing my goal setting in the implementation form, I had written in there that I wanted to work on letter sounds with my child that I had picked. And when I got my feedback from the teacher said to put specific letter sounds. So if I know that she's having trouble making a sh or an sound, to put those 2-letter sounds so that it actually can be measurable, so that I know when that child hits that mark. Because otherwise, if I just say that I want to work on letter sounds, how do I measure that? I can't. So I want to make sure that it's specific.
Going back to like building blocks. You don't want to say get proficient at building blocks. Well, what does proficient mean for that child? Stacks 4 blocks on his own. Something like that. That's specific. So we put this graphic on here just to show that there are multiple people working together to reach your goal for each child. It's not just you set the goal and then it's the child's job to reach that goal. You have to provide lessons, help for that child to get there. And it may not even just be you and the child. Think of everybody in your room, office staff. I mean, you can talk to us about it. We took the class. We can help you out.
And for all the assistants, remember, we'll have to have all of our goals posted. So let's say Abby's in the morning. She's like, all right, just me and Silence, what can we do? She can go look at my goals and say, oh, this is the goal. Let's sit in the black corner and work on stacking 6 blocks. That's something that she can do. Write an anecdotal.
Let the parents know what goals you're working on. They'll work on it with them.
Because they'll see it. Because our anecdotals and everything have to go into like coding. So keep in mind that that's all going to be visible to the parents.
And assessments, observations, anecdotals, all of those can also be done by the assistant teacher. So that brings us to anecdotal records. After you do the goals and you put it into your lesson plan, you implement it. We kind of skipped a little bit. We're not going to go into too much depth with the lesson plan. Then it goes back to assessment. So anecdotal records are another form of assessments. They are for your goals. So once you set your goal, you do your anecdotal record on that goal. So it's a written observation, word for word, action for action, what is happening. And just like your observations, it should be objective. And you should put a date, a time, a setting on there. So even just block corner or house area. And be as specific as possible. So we included an example. So why don't you guys take 10 seconds and read that really quick. Okay, so what do you notice about the anecdotal? What are the parts of it? What might my goal be for Jimmy? Anecdotals have to do with goals. So what could it be then? Language would be a good one. So as you read through there, I was pretty objective. You walked to the book center, you pulled out the basket, and then I was specific with the square wooden blocks. He dumped them onto the carpet, looked at me, and giggled. That's exactly what he was doing. This is what an anecdotal is. You know, lead teachers, assistant teachers, everybody can be responsible for it. Shows right and left-handedness. Yep.
Also the number of blocks. If you look at the number, there are goals in there that talk about specific lacing, stacking. They do have some numbers.
Mm-hmm.
On the side note,
coming back to the lesson plan, we're just going to touch on it briefly, that it will be changing. We're going to have to be incorporating WMELS into the lesson plan to make it more goal-oriented. Okay, for each individual child. It will end up being color or numbered for each child, and the goals will be attached. Will be lead teachers. It's up to you guys to then tell everybody in your group what your lesson plan means, so your assistant knows if you're gone, this is how you read the lesson plan. Coming back, what we want to know, assistant roles. What is the assistant teacher's role? Everything. Specifically, they can help with observations.
I would say knowing it for the week and month coverage would be set up. So if the lead teacher were to be sick, that's something that this is play out. Or if you know that you're in a room a lot, but you're not like Taylor or Audrey or Teresa, you're not in that room every day. You're gonna wanna just when you're in there, just take it out, look at it, so you kind of know where you need to go.
Okay, so how does WMELS help the children? How will that help everyone? Be more individualized? Absolutely. Okay, so how are we going to implement it? Teaching cycle. Will the lesson plans be the same? No. So just quickly, why WMELS? Why are we going to use it? Okay, individualized instruction. Check. It's teaching to the whole child. It's developmentally appropriate. And for our Young Star rating, vectors, itters, all that good stuff.
Is there one thing in this whole book that you guys noticed?
What was different that you may have
How do you know when a
noticed?
child reaches a milestone?
Or like where they should be developmentally?
How do you know that? Well, there's no age.
Yeah, it comes back to the developmentally appropriate. We're not looking at a 2-year-old should do this. Where is each child individually? Because not everybody reaches the same level when they get to a certain age.
and on the child focus one, they always have a CBC milestones. You can just look up the CBC website, and it has milestones.
But do not rely on that. It will not help you with your lesson plan.
No. It's just a guideline, just an outline to show you guys kind of where they should be, but each child develops at their own rate. And those developmental guidelines aren't necessarily right all the time.
We were shown them and told not to use them. So.
Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, like, you guys got 5 minutes from I don't even mind anything like that. It has whatever that's just barely walking at 19, 20 months. So I mean, like, you just can't follow them. Yeah, so for next month, go through, do a web, an observation, a goal, and one anecdotal for the same child. So you choose one child and do all of that. And that's essentially what you're going to do for every child. But we want you to take a look at all of the documents you have. Yep. February. Yeah, I guess who knows when the lead teacher meeting will be. Yeah, just let us know.
Yeah, don't see me. I'm busy.
Each classroom has their own tub. It will have everything that you need, everything that we've learned about and printed off, and examples everywhere of these things. So that will help you guys. It's got some nice literature, and eventually there'll be a binder in there, right? To every
We have the
single
binders. We have to get everything.
So essentially, when people are doing child portfolios, usually it's like one ginormous set of binders for each child. But with LifeCubby, we're hoping to make this a lot simpler. So this is kind of your WMELS, lesson planning, child portfolio tub. So it's labeled with each classroom will get one.
And then in your room.
Yep, and then the girls went through and labeled each folder for each child that you currently have enrolled with their date of birth on it, which is pretty nice. We'll have a checklist that will go in there so you'll know, like, okay, I did this observation, I did this sample record, this is the last time, this was their goal, So it's just basically a quick guideline for you. So it should all be pretty much in Life Cubby. But like for Emily, she's got to collect multiple art samples. So this would be like a great place that she could put their art samples in there until they get scanned into Life Cubby. Or you have like this thing that we talked about here. Maybe this is something you can keep in that folder. And then as the child moves, the folder will move with them.
And then this will all be in a binder. This is a stack of almost everything. Very important references that you guys can look back on.
That we had during our class. We turned
Yep.
it off for everybody.
So there's a example of the child's web. Lead teachers, some of your stuff that you have to fill out is in here. So you can look at it as an example.
There's a focused child observation.
Yeah, there's something in here called lenses. It just really tells you how to look at the whole child. So, I mean, I highly suggest that everybody goes through the binder at some point before we get too into it, because it's all important information that you guys are going to need to know. This will be like your reference bucket, your anything you guys need to know.
So there are blank like observation forms in there. Just don't
Make
fill those
copies.
out. Make copies of them.
Yep.
So that way you always have a blank. There is a large binder with absolutely every document we had during our class that we printed off. If somebody would like to look through that, I think it's back there.
Okay, it will be in the office.
Yeah.
You guys can